Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, the battle we face. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on the premium list, which you can find a link to in the description below, or go to intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. The battle that Bitcoin faces, it is certainly not facing alone. A lot of other assets are facing a very similar battle, and we're going to talk about that as well. And also the risks currently involved. And I'm going to actually show you visually how you can sort of understand the volatility of say, Bitcoin compared to, some of the altcoins and also some of the major stock indices. So, what is the battle we face? Well, the arch nemesis of Bitcoin, as always, right, is that bull market support band. Okay, the 21-week EMA and the 20-week SMA when you're below it. Okay, when we're above it, we love to hold it as support if we can and continue to put in a new high. And we did that, right? We did put in a new high, but we got stopped short of going to six figures. So, what is the battle we face? Well, we're going to take a brief tour of a few different markets, and we're going to show you the similarities. Okay, so here's Bitcoin. You can see that it's facing resistance off of the bull market support band. What's interesting though is we didn't really quite make it there. Okay, like we came within a few percentage points of it. We haven't actually made it there. But this is actually what we're seeing in a lot of different places. Go look at the NASDAQ. A similar story, right? 2 wicks up to the top, and then a pullback, and then a pullback back to the downside. That also did not make it up to the bull market support band. So that's the NASDAQ. This is Bitcoin. We're seeing some similarities. Ethereum, the same type of thing. We're seeing this pattern play out across a lot of different markets. We also see it in the S&P. However, it did make it up to the bull market support band and actually had a very brief wick above it on 2 separate weeks. So what are we seeing right now? We're seeing a lot of resistance across broader markets, not just crypto. Okay, so if you're sitting here thinking that we're off in our own little world, we're not. Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market very much remains a risk-on asset class, as much as we don't want it to be. I would argue that I kind of like it being a risk-on asset class because typically an asset class like the stock market tends to provide better risk-adjusted returns than precious metals, which again, if you think about gold, it's considered a risk-off asset generally speaking. So I'm just like, what, do I really want Bitcoin to not do anything for 10 years and then do something like gold? I don't know about that. But what I will say is that Bitcoin is facing a very similar battle that stocks are facing. And namely, that is the current rejection off of the bull market support band. And honestly, on a lot of these, we didn't even make it up to it. So I want to talk about what we would like to see happen. All right. By the way, before I say that, one of the things to consider here is while Bitcoin sort of got back up to its bull market support band and Ethereum sort of got back up to it, look at a lot of altcoins. They're nowhere close to it, right? It really does highlight the risk right now involved in altcoins. Look at the Ether Bitcoin valuation. It's also holding resistance here at its own bull market support band. So the point that I'm showing here is that we are seeing significant resistance, right, at this major level. Now, if we go look at the NASDAQ, this is a pretty important level for the NASDAQ to hold. Also, arguably, it's a pretty important level for the S&P to hold and a lot of other major indices. Now, the reason is because, and I think the next 2 weeks or so are going to be very important for the structure of these markets. Okay, because we are in danger of putting in a lower low. All right, on a lot of these indices, right? The NASDAQ is in danger of putting in a lower low. The S&P is in danger of putting in a lower low. Bitcoin could be in danger of putting in a lower low if the stock market is putting in a lower low, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what is the battle we face? Well, right now, the stock market is closed, right? We'll have to see what happens on Monday. But ideally, if we want Bitcoin to have any remote chance of having another go at the bull market support band without having to break down some market structure and then retry at lower levels, we would like to see the coming week for the stock market to have a very large green candle. And then, maybe I think a lot of people call it an engulfing candle, where essentially like holders or a lot of dip buyers come in and then just buy this thing up the same level that we held resistance at a couple times in the past, and we just buy it up, and we end up putting in a strong candle back up, and in that case the party could continue in the short term. Okay, so that is a tall order, right? I mean, the Nasdaq has more or less been in a downtrend here for quite a few months, so we'll see what happens. But this is the battle that Bitcoin faces. The same battle, right? Can we see a similar type move if the Nasdaq moves back up this coming week? I think we can. If the Nasdaq pushes up and has some type of engulfing candle where we wipe away the last couple of weeks of red, then I actually do think that would at least give us a chance to actually go back into the bull market support band and really test this as support, okay, or as resistance, right? Really see if this is going to be a resistance level. If that happens, then I mean, all eyes are going to be on this level anyways. If it doesn't happen, right? So if the Nasdaq does end up breaking down and putting in a new low in the short term, then I would argue that the Bitcoin bears are not going to be going into hibernation anytime soon, and that Bitcoin is very likely to come back down and at the very least retest the prior low. Okay, so I'll say that again. If the Nasdaq ends up putting in a lower low and really confirming this downtrend, then I think it would stand to reason that Bitcoin would also continue its own downtrend, or at least go test its lower low. One of the things we've noted before is that when Bitcoin is in a downtrend, whenever it tests the bull market support band, it either puts in a new low, like it did here and here. Well, this one was like the pandemic crash. But you can go back to 2018 and see, right? Anytime we retested it, we either put in a new low or we go back and sweep the prior low, right? Like we did here, and then we just came back up and then back down, and then and then ultimately we fell out. But you can see that pattern, right? If we get rejected by it, then we are likely going to either go test the prior low or go put in a lower low if we end up getting rejected. That is the current risk that we're facing. Okay, that is the battle we face. And right now, I would argue that we're at a very critical point. By the way, the week is not over yet. I mean, we certainly could have a rally into the weekend potentially, and maybe this candle will close green and take us all by surprise here over the next couple of days. But if it ends up closing like this, okay, like if Bitcoin ends up closing like this, and then the Nasdaq opens up red next week and immediately puts in a new low, then I think it would stand to reason there's a good probability that Bitcoin would then come back down and at the very least retest the prior low. That's the argument. One of the interesting things about navigating this space, just to be candid, is you if you're early and you're making videos or you're talking to your friends, right, and you're telling them all the great things about crypto, and then it goes up, then that it's all fun and everyone loves it. But if you ever talk about the downside risk, you can easily people like to poke fun of it and say, oh, this guy's bearish or whatever. Look, I just want people to understand the risks involved, and I think that hiding behind the idea that will only ever go up is not really a good thing to think about. This is one of the reasons why we talk about diminishing returns and whatnot, and how it relates to Bitcoin, and really assuming that these regression bands really should guide us throughout, as we navigate the cryptoverse. And I mean, this area over here seemed like a pretty obvious local top. This one, in hindsight, probably should have, but it certainly took me by surprise. Now we are, we're facing an area where we are below the bull market support band and unable to get above it in the short term. And so this is a pretty big battle that Bitcoin is currently facing. It is not facing it alone, right? Ethereum, same thing. NASDAQ, same thing. The S&P, same thing. Okay, I mean a lot of these things are facing the exact same thing. And again, the dollar, it's the reverse, right? It's holding support on the bull market support band. I don't think it's a coincidence. Okay, I mean you can see how these things do tend to be somewhat inversely correlated. It's not a perfect inverse correlation or anything like that. I don't want you to think that it is, but it's one of those things to say, look, there's a lot of risk right now in the market, and if we open up next week and the market is green, and the Nasdaq has some type of engulfing green candle that takes us back up, then crypto will likely surge with it, and then we'll all be left wondering who bought the dip. If, on the other hand, the Nasdaq and the major stock indices open red next week and we immediately put in a lower low and trend lower, then you're going to see a very similar type of reaction in crypto. So I think the best thing you can do is to be prepared for both scenarios. Some people were asking me, well, if you think that there's a possibility that Bitcoin could go down, does that mean you sold all your Bitcoin? No, that's not how I navigate these markets. In fact, when the market is bearish, I prefer to accumulate long term. Okay, I mean that's really the only winning strategy, I think, is to dynamically DCA. I mean, DCA is one method. I think it's an inferior method to dynamically DCAing. I mean, you weight your buys at lower risk levels or at lower prices. Meaning, if you were buying Bitcoin at 60K, then the ideal scenario is that you're buying more at 50K than you were at 60K. And if you're buying at 40K, you're buying even more at 40K. If it goes to 30K, then ideally you should have the cash on hand to buy even more, and then so on and so forth. I mean, it's not financial advice. That's just how I navigate these markets, is I want to make sure that I have the ability to put more in the lower we go. So we've shown the risk, right? I've shown you the battle. This is the battle we face. And I think the next couple of weeks, especially as we see what happens with a lot of these major indices, following tech stocks and whatnot, how do they react? How do they react going into the next couple of weeks, especially coming off a potential rejection here of the bull market support band? Which, by the way, I mean, to be completely honest, this does look relatively weak, the fact that we couldn't even get back up to it. Okay, I mean, I have to say it how it is, right? I don't control how it is. I just want to tell you how it is. And this move right here does seem like a relatively weak move that couldn't even be bothered to make it back up to, the 21-week EMA. Like, it couldn't even be bothered to make it back up to that level. So I don't really like to see that. I think the only hope we have of not really seeing some type of breakdown and continuation of the downtrend is to see some type of engulfing green candle this coming week, right? I mean, maybe the following week, but I think that, I mean, I'm just thinking like, okay, well, if this coming week, if it just stays somewhat flat or something, then you could kick the can down the road another week or something. But what you really want to see is you want to see some type of engulfing green candle to take us back up and to more or less continue the party. If that doesn't happen and we put in maybe I should switch this to like the daily time frame. So like if the engulfing candle does not happen for the NASDAQ and we end up coming, say, down here and putting in a new low, and then we come back up later on and then put in a lower high, then we'll have another test of it. And that same type of philosophy would probably apply to Bitcoin as well, right? So like in this situation, right now we're looking at a high and a potential lower high. If we ultimately get rejected here and Bitcoin comes back down, I think it's either going to retest the prior low if this is a confirmed rejection, meaning if we really do end up closing the week in the red and we come back down to these lows at the very least, then maybe we'll try again to see if we can get back above it, or we put in a new low and then try again and then see if we can get back above it. If you've been in the cryptoverse long enough, you've seen this game many times. We saw the same game. We played the same game in late 2020. We played the same game in 2019 multiple times, and we'll continue to play the same game over and over and over again. So try to manage your risk accordingly. You know what the battle it is. You know what the battle we face is. So we'll see what happens. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. Check out the sale on the premium list, intothecryptoverse.com. I'll see you next time. Bye.